They say everyone longs to be loved, yet the more one longs for it, the more distant it becomes. Love, in its truest form, does not arrive because it is demanded, nor because it is deserved. It arrives mysteriously in moments when the self is forgotten and when life itself opens a door. But here lies a disturbing truth. Love is never alone. Wherever love appears, pain is close behind. And wherever pain deepens, love is revealed in new, unbearable shades. This is the dimension most people avoid, the strange union of love, pain, and suffering. Society tells us that suffering is the enemy, that pain must be eliminated, that love should be free of sorrow. Yet what if the very opposite were true? What if pain is not the shadow of love, but its companion? What if suffering is not a punishment, but a passage into the deepest intimacy of existence? Alan Watts once said that trying to be loved is like trying to force yourself to sleep. The more you try, the more impossible it becomes. In the same way, the more you attempt to separate love from suffering, the more both dissolve into emptiness. This is not a comfortable message. It is not designed to soothe. It is meant to unsettle, to pierce the illusions we cling to. Because only by facing this mystery, this inseparable bond between love and suffering, can one begin to see the world as it truly is. If this reflection already stirs something within you, consider subscribing. This channel exists for those who dare to step beyond comfort and into clarity. The desire to be loved. Everywhere one looks, there is a hunger to be loved. It appears in romantic relationships, in family bonds, in friendships, in the endless search for validation online. Behind every carefully crafted image, every desperate attempt to be noticed, lies the same plea. See me. Approve of me. Tell me I am enough. Yet there is a paradox here. The more one craves love, the more hollow it becomes. To want love so intensely is to turn it into a commodity, an object to be acquired. But love refuses to be possessed. It cannot be demanded, bargained for, or bought. It slips through the fingers of those who try to control it. Alan Watts compared it to laughter. Genuine laughter comes uninvited. It bursts forth when one is caught off guard. But try to laugh on command, and the result is hollow, mechanical. Love is the same. The moment it is pursued with desperation, it loses its authenticity. This is why so many relationships collapse under the weight of expectation. When one partner demands constant reassurance, constant affirmation, constant proof of love, the connection suffocates. What they seek is not love, but security. And security, unlike love, is lifeless. True love has an element of risk, even danger. It cannot promise safety because it is born from vulnerability. To love is to stand exposed. To love is to risk rejection, abandonment, or loss. And yet, without this risk, love is nothing more than comfort dressed in disguise. Here lies the first uncomfortable truth. The desire to be loved is itself the obstacle. The more one clings to it, the more one creates distance. Love cannot be pursued. It must be allowed. And it arises most powerfully not when one is begging for it, but when one is so fully alive that love appears as a natural consequence, the door of suffering. From childhood, people are taught to avoid pain. Society promises happiness as the ultimate goal, and suffering is treated as a mistake, a flaw, an enemy to be conquered. The message is clear. If one suffers, something has gone wrong. But suffering is not a malfunction. It is woven into the very fabric of existence. To be alive is to encounter loss, uncertainty, and grief. To pretend otherwise is to live in denial. When Alan Watts spoke of suffering, he described it not as a punishment, but as a door. Pain, he said, strips away illusions. It removes the masks people wear, the roles they play, the false securities they cling to. In the silence of suffering, pretense collapses, and what remains is something raw, something real. Consider how suffering changes perception. In the midst of heartbreak, the trivial concerns of daily life dissolve. What once seemed urgent suddenly appears meaningless. The mind, once consumed by distraction, becomes sharpened by pain. Suffering forces attention back to the core of being. And yet most people spend their lives fleeing from this door. They numb themselves with entertainment, drown discomfort with substances, or chase constant distraction, anything to avoid sitting quietly with their own pain. But what they fail to see is that in running from suffering, they also run from depth. They remain on the surface, forever chasing shallow pleasures, never touching the profound. To step through the door of suffering is not to seek pain for its own sake. It is to stop resisting it when it comes. It is to recognize that life, in its fullness, includes moments of heartbreak, loneliness, and despair. These are not interruptions to life. They are life itself, speaking in another language. And here lies a strange paradox. Those who dare to face suffering without fleeing often discover a hidden richness. In grief, they discover compassion. In despair, they glimpse humility. In loss, they awaken to gratitude for what remains. Suffering, then, is not the enemy of love. It is the soil in which love grows deeper roots. For one who has not suffered cannot truly understand the fragility of life, and therefore cannot truly cherish the beauty of love. If these words resonate, share your experience in the comments. Which moment of suffering revealed something unexpected in your life? The meeting of love and pain. Love is often portrayed as pure sweetness, a balm for the wounds of existence. But anyone who has truly loved knows that it carries within it the possibility of heartbreak. To open the heart is to invite not only joy, but also suffering. Alan Watts once observed that the pleasure of love and the pain of love are not two separate things. They are one process, like the crest and trough of a wave. To imagine a love without pain is to imagine a wave without depth, a surface without movement. It cannot exist. Consider the love between two people. The more deeply they bond, the more vulnerable they become. With every moment of closeness comes the risk of separation. With every gesture of tenderness comes the possibility of betrayal or loss. The very intensity of love amplifies the possibility of pain, and yet this is precisely what makes love real. If love carried no risk, if it guaranteed safety, it would be nothing more than comfort, pleasant, but shallow. The sweetness of love is inseparable from its fragility. The flower is beautiful not despite its vulnerability, but because of it. The human impulse, however, is to demand love without pain, to cling to security while desiring passion. But in doing so, one strangles the very thing one seeks. When love is forced into the prison of control, it suffocates. To truly love another is to accept the possibility of loss, to embrace the shadow alongside the light. Even the grief that follows the end of love is not proof that love failed. On the contrary, it is proof that love was real. For grief is love's echo, a reminder that something precious once moved through the heart. The depth of mourning reveals the depth of connection. Seen in this light, pain is not the opposite of love, but its companion. To live fully is to accept this companionship, to stop imagining a love free from risk, for the wave cannot rise without falling, the song cannot end without silence, and love cannot shine without the possibility of pain. Here lies the uncomfortable truth. One cannot protect themselves from pain without also protecting themselves from love. The transformation of suffering. Suffering is often seen as something to endure until it passes, like a storm to be waited out. Yet for those who dare to look more closely, suffering does not merely hurt. It reshapes, it refines, it transforms. Alan Watts once said that pain is not here to destroy us, but to wake us. It interrupts the dream of permanence and forces us to confront what is real. In this way, suffering is not simply an obstacle on life's path. It is the path, carrying us into dimensions of being that comfort could never reveal. Think of the moments when suffering has broken open a life, a betrayal that stripped away illusions of control, a loss that shattered pride, an illness that dissolved the vanity of invincibility. In each case, suffering served as a mirror, showing truths that pleasure would never dare to reveal. This is not to romanticize pain. Suffering hurts, it wounds, it leaves scars. But within those scars, something extraordinary happens. The ego, once rigid and inflated, begins to soften. Compassion emerges where arrogance once stood. Empathy arises because one who has been broken recognizes the fractures in others. It is in this breaking that people often discover their deepest connections. Shared suffering creates bonds stronger than shared joy. Those who have walked through fire together carry an intimacy that no comfort could produce. In suffering, humanity remembers its oneness. But perhaps the greatest transformation comes from within. When one stops resisting suffering, when one allows it to do its work, a subtle shift occurs. The pain remains, but the fear dissolves. Instead of fighting against life, one begins to flow with it, even through its darkest currents. And in this surrender, suffering itself begins to change. It does not vanish, but it reveals a hidden gift, wisdom, the ability to see beyond surfaces, the clarity to know what truly matters, the strength to remain open even when wounded. Here lies the paradox. Suffering, when resisted, imprisons, but when embraced, it liberates. It strips away illusions and reveals the spaciousness of life itself. If this journey feels meaningful to you, consider subscribing. Together, we can continue exploring the places where pain and love meet and where suffering becomes wisdom, the mysterious dimension. At last, the pattern begins to reveal itself. Love, pain, and suffering are not separate events scattered through life. They are not enemies, nor are they accidents. They are woven together, threads of the same tapestry. Alan Watts often reminded his listeners that opposites belong to one another. Just as the front of a coin cannot exist without its back, love cannot exist without suffering. They are two sides of the same mystery. To reject one is, inevitably, to reject the other. This is why attempts to chase only love while avoiding pain always fail. It is like wanting the warmth of the sun without the burning of its heat, or the beauty of the ocean without the pull of its tides. Love carries with it the possibility of loss. Suffering carries within it the seed of compassion. To live fully is to allow both. In this mysterious dimension, suffering is not simply endured. It becomes a portal. Each wound opens the heart a little wider. Each loss makes love more precious. Each grief sharpens the awareness that life is fragile and fleeting. Without suffering, love would lose its depth. Without love, suffering would lose its meaning. The mind resists this truth. It wants clear categories, joy here, sorrow there. But life refuses to be divided. It flows as one continuous movement, a dance of light and shadow where joy and pain belong to the same rhythm. The mystery is not solved by choosing one side, but by embracing the whole. Seen in this light, the human condition is not a problem to be fixed, but a mystery to be lived. The question is not how to avoid suffering, nor how to cling to love, but how to recognize that both are expressions of the same living current. When this recognition dawns, something remarkable happens. Fear softens. Resistance weakens. Life, in all its strangeness, becomes enough. Even suffering, though painful, becomes a doorway into intimacy with existence. And love, though fragile, becomes infinitely more profound. This is the most mysterious dimension, a place where what once seemed like opposites reveal themselves as inseparable, and where life is no longer a battle to win, but a depth to inhabit. The search for love, the fear of suffering, the resistance to pain, these are not separate struggles. They are the same movement of the human heart circling endlessly, seeking safety where none can be found. Alan Watts would often remind us that life is not meant to be conquered. It is not a puzzle to be solved, nor a battle to be won. Life is a mystery to be lived. And within this mystery, love, pain, and suffering are not enemies, they are companions. When one longs desperately to be loved, love retreats into the distance. When one runs from suffering, suffering grows heavier. But when one stops chasing, when one stops fleeing, something remarkable occurs. Love comes quietly, without demand. Suffering becomes a teacher rather than a tormentor. Pain reveals itself as the sculptor of depth. This is the strange freedom hidden in the heart of existence, the freedom to stop resisting, to see that life, even in its darkness, carries beauty, to realize that love is not separate from pain, and pain is not separate from love. They belong together, as day belongs to night, as birth belongs to death. The conclusion, then, is not to avoid suffering, nor to idolize love, but to see both as expressions of the same reality. When the heart can hold this paradox, life ceases to be divided into good and bad. It simply unfolds, mysterious and whole. And perhaps in the quiet acceptance of this truth, one finds a deeper kind of love. A love not bound by conditions, not fragile with fear, but vast enough to embrace the entire spectrum of existence. A love that is not separate from suffering, but illuminated by it. So the invitation is simple. Stop demanding love. Stop resisting pain. Step into the mystery where both are woven together. In that place, life is no longer something to escape, but something to trust. If these words have spoken to something within you, stay with this journey. Subscribe, share, and continue walking with us into the spaces where truth hides in plain sight.